Dear old work platform, it's not you, it's us. Actually, it is you. Endless onboarding? Constant IT bottlenecks? We've had enough. We need a platform that just gets us. And to be honest, we've met someone new. They're called Monday.com, and it was love at first onboarding. Their beautiful dashboards, their customizable workflows got us floating on a digital cloud 9. So no hard feelings, but we're moving on. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
During meals, I would order the salad, and then I would go to the bathroom and I would eat the tuna, and then I'd go back to the table. As long as I had something in my stomach, I didn't care. I was becoming very numb to any emotion around it. I accepted that this was just the way that I was going to live.
Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast. I'm your host, Joanne Crone, joined here by the brilliant Bree Tucker.
Why? Hello, everybody. How are you? I thought you were going to go with the better Bree Tucker. Because I'm
because you're feeling better. Yeah, we're both feeling better. There was like mystery illness going through my house. We have no idea what me and my son had. No idea, because it wasn't something that had a lot of pain with it. It was just complete exhaustion. Exhaustion that got better with Dayquil. So it has to be sinus related. That is where I'm going with this. Like, it has to be. But I'm better. You're better. Everybody's better. And we're ready to have just a fantastic interview today. Because, guys, we have one of the Real Housewives. Yes. And we're talking about a subject that I think you will definitely be able to relate to. It is this perfection, this chasing of perfection, and how to know really when you're spiraling chasing it. Because we are talking to Jackie Goldschneider. She's the star of the Bravo hit TV show, The Real Housewives of New Jersey. And before joining the show in 2018, Jackie was an attorney and freelance journalist. Her writing has appeared in Good Housekeeping, HuffPost, and Scary Mommy, among others. The Weight of Beautiful is her debut book-length work. Jackie graduated magna cum laude from Boston University and received her Juris Doctorate from Fordham University School of Law before practicing law in New York City. And she now lives in New Jersey with her husband and their children, which, fun fact, 2 sets of twins. So,
oh my gosh!
I'm so excited to talk with Jackie. And a little bit of a trigger warning for this podcast. We do talk about eating disorders. So please keep that in mind as you listen, but it's going to be a fantastic discussion. So let's get on with the show.
You want mom life to be easier. That's our goal too. Our mission is to raise more self-sufficient and independent kids, and we're going to have fun doing it. We're going to help you delegate and step back. Each episode will tackle strategies for positive discipline, making our kids more responsible and making our lives better in the process. Welcome to the No Guilt Mom podcast.
Welcome, Jackie, to the podcast. We are so happy to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
You are our first Real Housewife. I'm like a big fan of the show.
Goodness. It's all downhill from here.
Well, your book, The Weight of Beautiful, we have been devouring it here at No Guilt Mom. Bree and I, we recently it was a company retreat that our clients came on to Cancun, Mexico. And Bree was right here in the airplane seat beside me, just going through and reading during that 4.5-hour plane flight. I have never seen Bree so involved in a book. She'll admit this herself.
Jackie, I was very interested in the story because growing up in the same time frame, that 90s perfection and everybody has to be so skinny, like moving into that area where everybody had so much put on how we look and that we had to keep getting thinner and thinner. I was really interested in your story, and it took me back. It brought me back to like all of those insecurities that we had growing up and like still have to this day. And I really loved also how so many of us as women have those parts of us that we're trying to reach perfection, and we keep it quiet how we get there.
Reading your book, Jackie, like it was a very similar upbringing for me. So like you start out and you have this house full of love, but there is also this obsession with kind of food and diet culture. What did that look like when you were growing up?
The food obsession part was the name of your podcast. It was about guilt. So my mother worked a lot. She was not home very often. So when she was home, she just wanted to shower us with so much love. And her way of doing that was often either buying things or feeding us. And so she would cook and she would just make these massive, massive portions of food and just really not understand that if we stopped eating, it had nothing to do with love, right?
Right.
So she would encourage us to just eat everything because for her, it was like, well, if I can fill you up with this, I feel less like I'm leaving you empty.
Well,
right?
and also, wasn't there that mindset too back then of like, if you don't eat everything I gave you, then you didn't like it. And if you didn't like it, then you don't like me.
Yes, absolutely. There was that. There was the guilt about not being home, about not cooking for us during the week. But also, she also had this mentality. She was her parents were Holocaust survivors. So there was never enough food when she was growing up. So her mentality around food was completely different than a lot of people have in modern day. She often felt like if you don't eat it now, I don't know if we're going to run out, which was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like the food scarcity thing that like a lot of people have that. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of factors went into her equating providing me with food with her providing me with security.
Oh, that is so interesting. Like for like my childhood, it was my mom and my grandma were both not happy with their bodies whatsoever. And so I really saw the whole like dieting spiral where you dieted for a bit and then you got to the weight you wanted and then gave everything up that you were doing. And it was like back and forth, back and forth. And they were attending Weight Watchers meetings.
Which was a big part of your story.
Yeah, I started attending Weight Watchers meetings when I was 20, and then you started it as a teenager.
I did. Yeah, I think that Weight Watchers, and disclaimer, I know they just filed for bankruptcy. Now they're offering a diet drug.
Interesting.
It's not the same Weight Watchers that it was back then, but I strongly feel like Weight Watchers in the 80s and 90s probably set off many an eating disorder. I would reckon to guess that if you interviewed 100 women who were on Weight Watchers in the 80s and 90s, about 90 of them developed eating disorders. Just my guess. But
and are we also going to like glaze over the whole Dexatrim push of the,
oh
80s
God,
and 90s too?
I was on everything.
Yeah. Weight Watchers, there was such a sense of food control. You tracked everything you ate. You assigned, like, I was in the points era. So you assigned everything points. And if you went over and under, that was how I determined if I was successful that day or not successful that day, which really does correlate to a lot of eating disorder habits or disordered eating habits.
Right. Well, what Weight Watchers did for me was it taught me to equate food with numbers and mathematical equations instead of with satisfying hunger or joy or eating balanced. So eventually it caught me at such a vulnerable low point in my life. And then I lost a ton of weight because I'm really good at math. And so I lost a ton of weight. And so in my head, it was like this triggered association between treating food as math, as numbers, and being happy. And so I lost this ability to eat for anything other than weight loss. And that stuck with me. I just could never get rid of that.
Yeah. Well, when you do it when you're a teenager, I mean, those are pretty formidable years. Things like that really implant themselves in your psyche. As like, I agree with that too. I feel like that's where I got a lot of my food behaviors as well. And you talk about in your book how you started identifying then as the thin one. So like, how did that then shape you and what you did?
Oh my gosh. Because I was always heavy. I was always heavy in high school. I was very overweight. And when I finally, I'm talking when I developed anorexia, which was, so I was a yo-yo dieter from the time I was 17 and went and stepped into my first Weight Watchers meeting. I yo-yo dieted until I was 26. And at 26, I became anorexic. And it was when I became anorexic that I started getting very thin. You know, I got to a point of thinness where people were scared. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about where I was like a head on like a floating body. It was when I was nearing that point, when I was like just very thin. And I'm also tall and I had extensions and, you know, so I had this long blonde hair. I was tall. The first time someone asked me if I was a model, I don't think I moved for about a half an hour after that. I just let like joy pour through my bones. It felt so good. Someone told me they had two friends named Jackie, and I was skinny Jackie. And I just felt so good about myself. And I remember that eventually it became my entire identity because I never felt special. I had a really, really hard time in high school. And so being thin and being the thinnest person in the room always meant that when I walked in, I was noticed.
Yeah.
And being the thinnest person in the room meant that that could be my identity. Thin could be who I was. More thin than anybody could be who I was. And I liked it. It felt like I had achieved something.
Right. You can tell just by the way you're talking about this, how that was like, okay, I am the best. I am the best at this, at this
yes,
form.
Because I didn't feel like I was the best at anything.
Yeah.
And I was the best.
And it was something that you were getting praised for. When did you realize that it was a problem and it had developed into anorexia?
Well, I knew that it was like problematic early on, but it was not something that I was willing to give up at all. So I brought a 900-page encyclopedia of caloric values on my honeymoon to Italy, and it was half my suitcase. And I knew that that was abnormal, but I didn't care because in my head I was like, well, everybody does stuff, half the world's on fen-phen, at least I'm not doing that. So I knew it was an issue, but when I went to Mexico and I ate the tuna out of the bag instead of eating my meals, I sat in the bathroom and I knew when I was eating in the bathroom, I knew that there was a problem. And then I came home and weighed myself, and my weight was so low that I said in my head, if I don't stop this, I'm going to die. And I didn't stop for another 15 years. But at that point, I knew, and I also knew that it was a mental illness at that point. Yeah. And I never realized that before because I never looked up anything. I didn't want to know. I didn't want to know what help was out there because I thought that if I got help, I'd go back to being fat and miserable. And I didn't know which was better, starving and being happy with the way I look, or eating and being just, so lonely and miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and which neither is true, of course, right? But those were the only choices I thought that I had. So I never wanted to look into, anything about help or anything.
Yeah. I want to jump a little bit back to your wedding day and to that tuna fish story. And we're going to do that right after this.
Work management platforms. Ugh. Endless onboarding, IT bottlenecks, admin requests. But what if things were different?
We found love in an open space.
Monday.com is different. No lengthy onboarding. Beautiful reports in minutes. Custom workflows you can build on your own. Easy to use prompt-free AI. Turns out you can love a work management platform. Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Okay, guys, the C word, it runs in my family, and a yearly physical just doesn't give me all the things I need to know. And that's why I am so excited about Function Health.
Exactly. We know you've heard us talk about it, but Function Health is truly the all-in-one health platform that helps you take control of your health through data. Instead of guessing what's happening inside your body, Function helps you know, providing access to over 160 tests.
These tests go way beyond most traditional checkup. We're talking about insights to your thyroid, hormones, liver, heart health, autoimmunity, kidney function, and even heavy metal toxicity.
What I love is that your Function membership includes biannual testing. So you establish a baseline and then you can easily spot changes over time. I'm really interested in the tests that help with understanding food and emotions and boosting my energy. So take control of your health outside the doctor's office today and get a $100 credit towards your annual membership at functionhealth.com/no-guilt. But act fast. The $100 credit is only for the first 1,000 listeners. Sign up right now at functionhealth.com/no-guilt. That's functionhealth.com/no-guilt.
You know what makes every outfit look better? The right bra from Third Love. Their bras make it easy to get ultimate cleavage, a smooth look, or even stop your shirt buttons from pulling. They make over 60 sizes, including half cups you won't find anywhere else. So you'll find your perfect fit. Third Love solves bra problems, or what they call brablems. Real women test every style they make. Comfort and support are guaranteed. So stop settling for bad bras. You deserve better. Get your problem solved today. Save $15 on your first order with code PODCAST15 at thirdlove.com.
So, Jackie, I know that wedding day perfection is a huge thing for so many women.
Oh my God, it is.
I mean, I gave myself 2 years after I got engaged before I got married because I wanted to lose 20 pounds. I did through like this diet called HMR that my husband was on at the time, where it's like these like prepackaged meals and shakes and whatever. And then I gave it up 2 months prior to my wedding. My seamstress was like, oh, it's a little tight. It's getting a little, but like that body pressure to be thin on your wedding day is so intense. And you write about your wedding day and yet being absolutely freezing from starvation.
Mm-hmm.
So what were you telling yourself in those moments to keep going with it?
Well, I didn't have to lose any weight for my wedding day because by the time I got to my shower, which was like 3 months before my wedding, I was absolutely emaciated. There was no more weight left to lose. It was all just maintenance. And it wasn't really even about wedding day. It was life. I needed to stay thin for so many reasons in my head. I thought that maybe my husband will stop loving me, or maybe everyone at the wedding will be talking about, I just didn't want everyone saying, oh, thank God you got healthy again. Because that word healthy was always super triggering for me. It's not anymore. But back then, healthy to me meant fat. So I just didn't want anybody. So I said, let me just get past this and let me get past that. So the wedding was not an issue in terms of like wanting to lose weight, but it did destroy my entire wedding experience. I mean, all I thought about was what I ate and what I could eat and what I was allowed to eat. And I didn't eat at my rehearsal dinner. I didn't eat on my wedding day. I think I had a few bites of fish because I wanted to have a drink. I was very, very scared of the cake. I didn't want to eat in front of people. I didn't want to eat the cake because I was on such a restricted calorie diet that one bite of cake I had to overestimate just in case. And it would take up so much of my food. And I didn't know what was in the icing. Like the whole thing made me so nervous.
Right. Like reading your book, the thoughts that you went through in your head all the time, trying to figure out what ingredients were there, how much they were, where that math fell. I was exhausted just reading it. I can't imagine trying to stay on top of that 24/7.
Yeah, it was really exhausting.
So, Jackie, you briefly mentioned the eating tuna fish on your honeymoon, but I think people need to know the exact extent of this story and what you did and how you prepared to eat tuna fish on your honeymoon and like how you actually ate that. Because you were at an all-inclusive resort, right, for your honeymoon?
Yeah, so it wasn't my honeymoon. My honeymoon was in Italy, and that I ate nothing except sauce and salad.
Got it.
It was a trip to Mexico that my husband and I took a few months after our wedding. It was all inclusive. And I would always call a restaurant before I went there. I never just cold went to a restaurant ever. I would just lie and tell them I had all these allergies so that my food would be steamed. I didn't want it cooked in any oil. And I wanted to make sure they would make me vegetables without any oil. So otherwise I would just bring my own food. So the resort in Mexico was all inclusive. They wouldn't change anything on the menu.
Yeah.
So I was horrified and I didn't know what to do. And I was freaking out. And we already paid for the trip. There was nothing more beautiful to me than when I discovered a new food that actually tasted somewhat decent and was low calorie and was packaged. That was like my holy grail. So they had these, I think they still make them, but they were like these 70 calorie little cans of pre-mixed. So it wasn't just dry tuna. It was pre-mixed with like a mayo and a couple pieces of like metal tasting celery, right? Yeah. And I brought, I think 36 of those with me.
That's a lot to carry on a suitcase.
I mean, they were light and they were small, and I put them all in I would package everything beautifully so that no one could see it. And they were sealed, there was no chance of them breaking open. And I mean, yes, it is a lot to bring, but for me, it was fine. And I brought them with me and I would just put a few in my purse. And during meals, I would order the salad and then I would go to the bathroom and I would eat the tuna. And they came with like a little spoon on them. And then I'd go back to the table. As long as I had something in my stomach, I didn't care. About a year into the anorexia, I was becoming very numb to any emotion around it. I accepted that this was just the way that I was going to live.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
It was not until I started questioning how long can I live like this that I could ever get rid of it, but for a long time I was like, well, this is just it. This is what you got to do. And the reason people don't like it is because they can't do it. Right. So you'd make all these excuses for yourself, but the tuna in the suitcase, I was kind of numb by that point, and I was sad about it. I remember, and I knew that it was problematic, but there was nothing in me that felt strong enough to change.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What about when you became pregnant with your kids?
I was anorexic while I was pregnant.
Yeah.
I went to a prenatal nutritionist because I did not want to mess with the health of my children. But at the same time, mental illness, I was not strong enough to stop. So I said, can you give me a food chart, please, for how much exactly I need to eat of every single nutrient in order to have healthy twins? And, she gave me some spiel about, oh, you have to eat for yourself too. And I really brushed her off, and I walked out with that food chart, and I made sure that every single day I hit just the exact bottom of that food chart, the very minimum of what I had to do to keep my kids healthy.
Yeah.
And I ate not one thing for enjoyment. I ate not one thing for my own health. And I don't know what my habits contributed to my kids being born premature, underweight. I was very sick, and I had a lot of problems feeding them even when they were born because I had no connection between hunger and eating. So for me, it was like everything was done by a mathematical equation. So if they didn't eat enough, I was frantic.
Yeah. I could just draw so many parallels to the way you thought and my own thinking in food, and especially restriction of food. But with me, I didn't have, and this is so hard to say because I think a lot of women hearing this may say this too. And they may be like, oh, but I don't have that self-control, which is also kind of a messed up way of thinking as well. Just berating ourselves so much for anything we have to do with food and making food this not a thing we need to live, but a thing we need to control and a thing we need to restrict. And it just takes so much brain power every day to do that.
Yeah.
Right after this break, we want to talk about how things started to change, and especially when you became part of the cast of The Real Housewives of New Jersey. So we'll get to that right after this.
On average, you'll have to wait 31 days to see an OBGYN. And if you're dealing with an infection or outbreak, you know you need care fast. That's where Wisp comes in. Connect with a U.S. licensed provider online and pick up safe, effective treatment at your local pharmacy that same day. Plus, get birth control and more delivered in all 50 states. Take control with comprehensive sexual and reproductive care, all from your phone. Wisp. That's hellowisp.com. The waiting room can wait.
Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant. 9.5 plus pH, now in cans.
Refreshing.
Made for every way you move.
Should I run a marathon?
Let's start with finishing that water. Smart Water Alkaline with antioxidant, now in a sleek can. For those with a taste for taste. Grab yours today.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for this day.
So, Jackie, you have talked about how you had been keeping this image up of perfection. I've got it all together. I've got the perfect life. I've got the perfect husband. I've got the perfect family. And you had been doing in your mind well with everything that was going on. I'm going to tell you, you were doing well as best you possibly could with the mental health issues that you had going on around food. So what made you go when they came to you with the idea of you joining the Real Housewives of New Jersey? I know that you had to do some convincing with your husband, but what went through your head of I can do this. I can do this. And because you also knew that you were hiding your eating disorder and you were like, I can go on TV and still manage to make this work.
A bunch of things.
Yeah.
Number one is that I was 15 years into anorexia already.
Yeah. And you're like, I'm a pro at this point.
Right. I knew how to hide it.
Mm-hmm.
I allowed myself 1 to 2 meals a week where I could eat unknown foods.
Mm-hmm.
So I could save all of that for when I was on camera. The number one thing in the first question I asked was, do you leave cameras at my home? And they said no. And so the show only films you when you're filming a scene.
Right.
If they had left cameras at my home, of course, I could not have done it because 24 hours a day, I can't hide my eating disorder. But for a 2-hour scene every day, I could hide this eating disorder. A lot of scenes don't involve eating at all. I knew that that wouldn't be a problem. But when you think about the reasons why I developed the eating disorder in the first place, because I didn't feel special and because I just wanted to be seen, I wanted people to love me. I mean, all of that was being handed to me on a silver platter. They came to me and said, essentially, like, hey, you want to be famous and one of the select 50 people in the country who gets to call themselves a real housewife? I mean, there was no way someone like me who was just searching for validation was going to say no to that.
Yeah. Can you share with us, like, you talk about the time that you went away on the trip and, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember where you guys had gone. It was the second trip and you were rooming with your best friend and you weren't quite sure how you fit in the cast.
It was Jamaica, I think.
Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about that and the moment that you realized I haven't been hiding things as well as I thought. Things are kind of coming to a head here.
Oh, yeah. In Jamaica, I think that's the trip that you're talking about.
I
We
think
took
so.
several trips that year.
I know. I'm all like, wait, which one was that?
Yeah. I think the producers started catching on to my issues. And so there was a scene in our room where we had to talk. And my friend sat down at a table that was just filled with complimentary food. And I just didn't want to sit there because I knew she'd be eating. And I didn't want to eat because I already had the amount of calories that I allowed myself to have before dinner. And I didn't count on eating again. It made me just very nervous. And then she encouraged me to eat. And I remember saying, we're having dinner in 2 hours.
Yeah.
And it sounded so ridiculous to her. The only way that I felt safe was with all these rules that I made for myself. And as long as I stayed in the rules, I felt like I could breathe. And I felt like I didn't need to constantly think about it. Like I just followed the rules.
Yeah.
You know, it was breaking my rules to have to eat something at that point. And so I was just so anxious inside. They made me film a lunch scene where Melissa, who I was with, and she can eat. I mean, she has just the metabolism that I dream about. And she just ordered all this food for the table. And I just knew that I couldn't eat any of it.
Yeah.
And the whole trip just made me so nervous. And it was one of the hardest trips that I've ever taken. It was just so hard because there was food everywhere. And I didn't know how to eat any of it.
Yeah.
So after that trip, what did you do next, realizing that it made you so anxious?
Nothing. I mean, filming is 3 months, 4 months. So like nothing. I just had to make it through. And then I could go back to like breathing again, because at home, my issues, nobody called me out on them.
Right.
My husband noticed them, but he had his experience with.
Yeah, he learned a long time ago. Yeah,
I don't
bring it up.
blame him for not trying again. I mean, I was an adult. I was,
So for that whole story, make sure to go get Jackie's book, The Way to Beautiful. A little teaser there.
So, I mean, there was nothing that I changed. That same season, I ended up getting called out for my behavior around food. They said that I didn't eat, and it became a whole discussion. And I had prepared for that in advance, just in case that day did come. You know, I was so warped in my head around food that part of me felt like this is mine and it's not anyone's right to know anything about it. And the other part of me felt like what a disservice I'm doing to anybody who had recovered. Because in that moment, I claimed that I had recovered. Yeah. And I felt so bad. I don't know. I felt really bad about it. And when I did choose to recover, I felt like I had to do it so publicly to make up for everything I had done wrong and the mixed messages that I had given to everyone.
Yeah. So tell me more about how you felt bad. Was it feeling bad because of those mixed messages that you presented this one reality of yourself and it wasn't that?
You know, I felt bad that people thought that it was attainable, this level of thin in your 40s. I mean, I was I dipped between if you look at the season my fourth season on the show when I chose to recover. I started the season so thin, probably the thinnest that I was after having children. I was stressed out. And when I was stressed out, my default was eating less and less, exercising more.
Yep.
I was like breakably thin. There's that pool party at Teresa's house where I'm wearing like a blue skirt. And I was definitely like a size 00. And I felt this guilt letting people think that that's a natural body type in your 40s, because it is not.
Right.
It was at that point that I was already thinking about how much longer can I do this? I mean, actually at that point, at that party, when I did decide to recover, I needed to let everybody know, because there were times over the 5 years preceding that where I had wanted to recover. And I would wake up just the same way people do with weight loss. And I would say, tomorrow I'm going to do it. And then, I would go to my refrigerator and I was just so scared to eat anything. And I just didn't know what to do. And I could never do it. And then if I feel like, well, nobody knows anyway, so like no one's holding me to it. So when I did decide to recover and I knew that I needed that to save my life, I had to tell everybody I knew. And that included the entire audience of like Bravo's most popular show, so that the entire world would hold me accountable. Because I knew one thing. If I told everybody I have an eating disorder and I'm going to recover, there was no way in hell that I was allowing women who experience the same traumatic experiences that I had. There was no way I was going to let them think it was too hard. No way.
That's amazing.
It's amazing too, Jackie, because you did this all in the public spotlight. And I totally understand why you told the public that you were going to recover, to have that accountability with it. But also what I think people need to know is that when you mentioned that there was a scene where they encountered you, that confronted you about your eating habits. I used to work in reality television before I did all this. I was in Los Angeles at a television production company. And that scene was definitely premeditated and scripted out.
Oh, yeah.
And to have that where everybody else knew, and then that they knew, and I couldn't imagine the pressure that you were under during that time.
I also knew what show I was on,
Yeah,
I love the Real Housewives, but I knew that this is part of it. So people have asked me, at the time I was, like best friends with Margaret, and she's the one who brought it out. And they said, were you mad at her for not confronting you privately as a friend and seeing if you needed help? And really kind of no, because this was the show that we were on and this was our job. And we understood, and I understood that this was her job. And if we took everything off camera and confronted each other privately, there wouldn't be a show and we wouldn't be doing our job. So I did understand that, but nobody ever said a word to me, which was crazy, because I was so blatantly sick, especially in the days in my 30s before having kids. I was so thin and so sick, and everybody who ever went out with me could see it and would know it. And it's a really hard thing to confront someone about. It's a very sensitive topic, but even doctors, nobody said a word to me.
That's crazy.
So when you finally hit the point where, like you said, that you were like, okay, I need to get better, I need to be held accountable, was there a part of you at all that was surprised that people were like, yeah, we know you have an eating disorder, because of the fact that nobody ever confronted you about it before that?
Oh, no. I knew that everybody knew.
I knew that everybody was doing the turning a blind eye.
Yeah. I mean, when I came out with it, I got calls from people from my past who I had never spoken to. And they said, I've always wanted to apologize for not saying anything, but I'm so happy now. I was so worried about you, but I didn't know what to say. I got so many of those phone calls. My best friends from college, they told me, they were like, there were so many times I wanted to say something and I just didn't know what to say, So everyone was very relieved, but no, I mean, it was like the biggest open secret in the world.
Well, with that being said, now that you have the ability, that this platform in your life, the place where you are now, what would you say to somebody that has a friend, a coworker, a family member that they really feel like, they're struggling? There's something going on here in terms of a negative eating disorder type situation. What would you encourage them to say to that person when they're like, I don't know what to say?
So I would encourage them to say something, because what keeps an eating disorder alive is the secrecy, right? And you feel like you're the only person who knows about this and who understand everyone would think you're crazy. So I think letting the person know, not in a long drawn out speech, but just, hey, sometimes I worry about you with food. If there's ever anything that you want to talk about or you want my help finding, help, I'm here for you. And just knowing that alone is enough. If the person has a loved one that you can reach out to, that can maybe be a little more intrusive. Like if my husband had came to me later in life and said, hey, you want my help nipping this in the bud? I think I would have been a little more receptive to it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think, and also if you know the resources that can help somebody and you offer that to somebody, it makes it easier. So if someone had came to me, because part of the problem was I never knew how to get help, and I'm a smart girl, right? I never knew where to even start looking. I felt like this was all something that existed in my head, and like I was the only person that anyone would ever have known who had anorexia, and I didn't even like the word. But if someone had came to me and said, hey, the National Eating Disorder Association has a website and they have all these resources and they have therapists who are trained in eating disorders. And here's 2 that are in your area. And here's this screening tool that you can use to see if you have a problem. It would have made it a lot easier to get started on that journey. So to anyone who has a friend who might have an eating disorder, let them know that you're there, that you can help them find resources, that there are therapists who are experienced in this, and that anytime they want to talk about anything, you understand what they're going through and you are there for them with no judgment. And maybe reach out to somebody who's a little closer and can be a little more intrusive with it.
And we'll put that link too in the show notes.
Yes, please.
And
thank you.
Jackie, we talked earlier about how you identified as thin Jackie. Now that you're on the other side of it, how do you define yourself now?
That was really hard for me. It was very hard going up in sizes because for me to give up size 0 felt to me like I was giving away my identity. And the truth is I had to find new ways to identify. And now it feels like, how did I ever identify with something so shallow? Like, how was I so proud of just being thin? I would so much rather be known as a writer, as a mother, as a wife, as a woman who fights against anti-Semitism. I would rather be known for all these other things in my life that I can't believe that I chose skin and bones as the way that I wanted the world to see me. So, I mean, like, it did take me a little while to get there. Yeah. And it was hard gaining weight. I'm not going to lie, but giving up that identity allowed me to identify with things that are just so much more valuable. Yeah.
That is a really empowering statement. And now looking towards the future, Jackie, what is something coming up in your life that you are looking forward to?
I am writing my second book, which is so exciting. And so I really look forward to that. My show is on pause, so we don't know what is happening with that. But, like you said, I have 2 sets of twins. My older set is 2 boys who are 17. And so we're embarking on the entire college process, which is so exciting. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I mean, there's just so much life to look forward to. And now I look forward to traveling. We just came back from Spain. We spent 7 days there. I didn't work out once. I didn't even check if the hotel had a gym. I ate all kinds of new foods.
That's awesome.
I mean, it's just so, life is just so much better.
Yes.
When all of your thoughts are not taken up with dieting, right?
Yes. Amen.
The world did throw me a curveball with the diet drugs. And I don't fault anyone for being on them. But for me, I came back into a world where I thought I was going to be enjoying food with everyone I've ever known. And turns out like half of them are on diet drugs and don't want to eat with me. And
I get that.
Joanne's like, you hit it there.
Right? And also, it made it harder to gain weight when everyone around me is losing weight, So I did have that curveball. Life is so much more enjoyable when you are not worrying about all of that. And my health did restore. A lot of things that were going south came back to life. So, I wish I had done it earlier, but thank God I did it when I did.
Yeah. Well, now, and you're sharing your message too to hopefully reach those women who are right in the throes of it and to show like there is life on the other side. So, Jackie, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. This has been so enjoyable. And when you do your next book, we should do this again.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
So that was our first Real Housewife.
Yes.
I am such a fan of the show. Like I struggled to maintain focus in our conversation with Jackie because she mentioned Melissa. I'm like, it's Melissa Gorga. She's talking about Melissa Gorga. And then she mentioned Teresa. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Teresa. I'm like, Joanne, focus. We are talking about perfectionism and overcoming perfectionism. Like,
it's hard when it's like that. Like, I get it. That's definitely been with me with a couple of guests, but I'm not as big into the reality shows. So like with me, it would be like if they were like a TikTok star that did voices for dogs. I'd be like, oh my God, I know that person. Like I want to have Hammy. I want to have Hammy of Hammy and Olivia on.
Oh.
But no, I loved Jackie's story. I mean, she is slightly older, but not much. Like I'm still in that same realm of like when she's talking through her timeline of the 90s and with the Weight Watchers, that definitely made me think of you and your stories with your mom doing Weight Watchers and then you going into Weight Watchers.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love how honest she was about all of it when she came to the point of recovery, because I feel like, and everybody has their right to privacy, whether or not you're in a reality or whether or not you're in television or movies or film or whatever or not. Everybody has a right to privacy. But the fact that she came out and said it and worked through it in such a public light, I feel is huge.
Yes.
I feel it was really, really huge.
I mean, it's interesting seeing her perspective because she said she knew her job. She knows that this is why she is on the show and this is how it is. And being able to accept that is unbelievable. I don't know if I could have done that. I don't know if I could have been like, you confronted me about my eating disorder on live on TV with all these other people around and all these cameras. And I mean, if Real Housewives is anything, like I remember shooting reality shows, like there's lights set up all around. Yeah. It's definitely a camera production. It is nothing intimate. They have gorgeous scenes they set on that show. And I'm like, ooh, there's lighting in that one, So it's interesting her being able to go through with it and like actually maintain that friendship. But as she says, she knew the job. She knew it coming in. She is using it as a force for good and helping other women. Does the same. And I think there's power in that.
Well, of course you do. Like, this is our thing. This is what we do. Sometimes it's interesting. I know, like, when I'm talking to people about my life and everything that I have going on. Well, okay, for instance, I'm starting with a new therapist recently, and I've been talking to her about things, and she's just like, at the end of our sessions, Joanne, I swear to God, half the time her face is like, oh my God, okay, that's a lot. And I'm like, I'm very open about things because I'm not going to get better if I'm not 100% honest. And I feel like the struggles that we go through in our lives, you have said, and I feel like we have those struggles for a reason. They're to share with others that you're not alone. You're not the only one who has this struggle because, and I say that in a way of when we feel like we're alone and it's all just us, we feel like there's no way anybody could understand us and there's no way anybody could help us.
Yeah, exactly. It's the secrecy that fuels it, as Jackie said.
Right.
Yeah. And when we're secret about it, it actually makes it a little bit worse because you don't know, you don't have that common humanity that tells you that you're not odd. Other people are suffering with this as well. And you have community around you to help you out.
Yep. And we're here to share those stories that like you can overcome it. You can get there. And it would be great if all of us were able to get there the first time we thought about it and the first time we tried. But sometimes it takes multiple chances, multiple swings at it before you get to a point where you're like, okay, I'm good to start moving forward with this. And it's there. And we have a link to Jackie's book. I highly recommend it. It was a very, very good read. I felt like I was
right
in
here.
it.
Yes. The plate with the single P right there. Yeah.
I felt like I was there going through everything with her. It was a really, really fantastic story. And we have resources at the link below for the National Eating Disorder.
We will put it below, definitely. And if you know a mama who could really benefit from this episode, send this along to her. Let her hear Jackie's story and talk about it with people you don't know too, or give us a review right there on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Would you take the time to do that? It like shows this to so many more people so we can get the word out there that yes, even though you are high achieving and trying to get all this stuff done, there is a point in life where it does become too much. And how do you survive through that? And how do you move on from that? So with that, remember, the best mom's a happy mom. Take care of you. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for stopping by.
If you'd like to support the show further, you can share episodes with your loved ones, leave a positive review, or follow us on social media at No Guilt Mom. You could also show your love by visiting our amazing podcast sponsors. We have a link in the show notes.
Your child has so much potential, but your local schools may not be right for them. Check out K-12. K-12 powered schools are accredited tuition-free online public schools for students in kindergarten through 12th grade. This is not your typical homeschooling. With state-certified teachers specially trained to teach online, your child will learn at their speed, at home, with innovative, engaging technology. Join the more than 3 million families who have chosen K-12. Go to k12.com/podcast today to learn more. That's k12.com/podcast.